Away we go with lunch therapy. Hey everybody, welcome to Lunch Therapy. It is Interview Friday. So on Fridays, as many of you know, I have interviews with people. Lunch Therapy is a show, of course, where we forget about all the horrible stuff that's going on just for half an hour, 45 minutes or so. We just let our brains kind of decompress and let us talk about some stuff that's just fun. We do a little therapy, we do a little lunch, and we do a lot of laughing. So we start the show with 3 deep breaths. So if you'll join me, feel your feet on the floor or your feet in the bed or wherever you happen to be, and take a deep breath. And let it out. I'm feeling better already. Another deep breath into your lungs. Where else would you put a deep breath? I don't know. Let it out. One more deep breath. Try and fill up those lungs and let it out. Today I'm out of the penalty box on Facebook, so I'm back on Facebook. I am back in all the usual spots, Instagram and Twitter and YouTube, and people can join in and chat all they want. Today we're lucky enough to have one of my favorite people, Jonathan Sposato. Jonathan Sposato is an entrepreneur, a philanthropist, a feminist. He's also started a lot of great companies. He sold 2 companies to Google. He founded GeekWire. A lot of you read GeekWire. Also PicMonkey, Picnic. And he's just a really fun person to be around. So, and I see Tony Kraft is here. Sposato, yes. Spo, that's right. So he's going to be coming our way. You guys can listen to this. You can jump in the chat room. You can go in and out of the Facebook thing. Fact check us because our memories are feeble. You could be prancercising while you're listening to the interview, whatever you guys want. Jonathan Sposato, high five, a man who supports women. Yes, we'll talk about that as well. And I'm glad to see Eddie Mitchell is here. It's like a reunion. Ganell wishes he could be an ist of some sort. Ganell is on Twitch. Some of the people are on Twitch too. I forgot to mention that. But anyway, let's get on with it, right? Let's get into this interview with Jonathan Sposato. And here we go with Interview Friday. Okay, everybody, here we are today for another interview on Interview Friday of Lunch Therapy. I am lucky enough to be here today with Mr. Jonathan Sposato.
I'm the lucky one.
He's the
to
lucky
be here
one.
with Mr. Joel Marshall.
Yeah, don't you forget it, pal.
Yeah,
don't you
that's
forget
right.
it.
Yeah.
No, we're so glad. I'm so glad to have you here. It's something when I talked to Matt Wright and when I talked to Jeff Lohman, and also Kevin, always your name came up. We were like, we got to get a hold of Jonathan, got to get him in here. And so I'm glad to have you here. I have known, Jonathan was one of my best friends growing up. And we have known each other since, this is my question, since what grade? When did you come to Edmonds?
Right. So I knew you were going to ask me that. I don't think we certainly weren't best friends immediately. Yeah. Like we knew about each other, like 4th grade, 5th grade, things like that. But I don't think that we actually really deepened our bond until I think high school.
I think so too.
But to answer your question, I came to Edmonds, Washington into 4th grade when I was 9 years old. So as you may know, I was actually born in London.
Mm-hmm.
Then we lived in Brooklyn. I was born to a single mom, and we didn't have really two dimes to rub together. And actually, ultimately, she couldn't take care of me by herself because she had to work and all that stuff. And they made me I published a book a couple of years ago all about the stuff that you and Kamala are very interested in. That's right. Empowering.
We're a couple of feminists is the deal.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And I think that we still have work to do, but I'm so appreciative and grateful for the work that you and Kamala do.
And we are appreciative of yours as well.
Thank you.
As well.
But any event, all I'm saying is that for some reason, the publisher found that my own background story about my origin was interesting and somehow relevant to ultimately representing underrepresented minorities. So any event, I was born to a single mom, and then she couldn't take care of me. So she sent me to live with my maternal grandparents in Hong Kong.
Yep.
And I didn't speak the language. So when I was a kid, when I was like 3 or 4, I went to Hong Kong and I had to learn how to speak Cantonese. And then she got married to an Italian-American man who I still consider my father. He legally adopted me. She got married to him when I was about 7 years old. 2 years later, I came back to the United States, and I came back to Edmonds. They had moved from actually Princeton, New Jersey, to Edmonds, Washington. So really? 4th grade was when you and I would have first met.
Mr. Chesbu? Did you have Mr. Chesbu?
I did have Mr. Chesbu, and sadly, my one memory, my strongest memory, as I'm sure you may have, is him squeezing
the Chesbu squeeze.
That's it. Was it named
it was
the Chesbu squeeze?
Yeah, the Chesbu squeeze. There was one that he did on your arm that many of us got. Brutal. You would just it was like a Vulcan.
It was the Vulcan thing. Yeah. Years later, when I became a Star Trek fan, I would be like, I think that's Mr. Chesbu right there.
That's the Chesbu squeeze. Yeah. I remember it would make your whole body you couldn't do anything. You couldn't think about anything. You could not move any part of your body when he had it. But he also did one on the neck, which I think only Peter Lowe got. Peter Lowe.
I had not thought about Peter in all these years.
I think he passed on, is what I heard.
Is that right? I'm
sad. Yeah, he was definitely a highlight of 4th grade because he would do pretty much whatever he wanted. And he had these he would get kind of angry sometimes.
Yes.
I remember he threw a desk.
Yes. Yeah. And Joel, now you're jogging my memory. I'm so sorry that I'm at the age of 53. You just don't remember anything. But now I remember, Joel, you and I also were friends because my dad and Mr. God, what were they? A coach, basketball coach.
In 4th grade?
Pinsino.
Mr. That was good.
Mr. Pinsino and my dad coached us in 4th and 5th grade basketball.
Oh my gosh.
And Peter Lowe was on that team. And now I remember
that. On our team.
That's right. Yeah.
Right. I remember that being pretty difficult. I remember they would give us big old plastic shorts. We were on
plastic shorts.
The youth club.
Yes. They were just always too baggy.
Big old plastic shorts.
Not at all flattering.
No. It was definitely not cool.
And in a knee-high tube socks.
I was just not a great basketball player either. You were a much better basketball player than I was.
No, I don't know. Just barely.
In our neighborhood, basketball was the pinnacle of success. If you were a good basketball player, you were super cool.
Yeah, that's right.
We had Paul Urbano and we had Tracy Thompson.
Yeah, that's right.
And Scott Amy and Rob Thal, and everybody was just all about basketball. And I was not that great at it. I was not.
No, you were always a really good athlete. And let me disabuse all of your viewers right here now. You have been representing, whether it's via the Myth Club or any time you talk about your childhood, or that somehow we were all a bunch of freaks and geeks and not the cool kids. I would argue, I would say it this way. I would say that you and Kevin and Trevor and Jeff and Matt and all the Matts, Matt Kite, Matt Latimer, right? There were 3 Matts. Yeah. I would even lump in Dan Smith in there. I would argue that we were, if not objectively speaking, the cool kids in the conventional sense, we were certainly highly interesting kids.
I like it a lot. I don't know if I believe it, but I love it.
Oh,
I love
absolutely.
the concept, debunking the idea of being a bunch of dorks.
Yeah, well, we were plenty dorky in some ways, but I mean, Joel, let me just say that, I mean, you were, you know, weren't we on a football team together?
Yeah, we were on the football
tennis
team together.
and
You stood up for me one time because what happened was they had the Scholar Athlete of the Year award. This was in high school.
Yeah.
And I was a lineman, a hog, as they called us.
Oh yeah, they said
and they
stuff
went
like
around
that. Yeah.
to ask people like, who should we give the Scholar Athlete of the award to? And they went to you and said, Jonathan, should we give you the Scholar Athlete award? And you were like, no, you should talk to Joel Marshall over there. And I ended up winning this award.
Yeah,
thanks
absolutely.
to you, because they never would have come to me. Because
no,
they just didn't think
they were working in reverse alphabetical order.
I don't think so.
It's like Mike Zaretic. Oh, that was last year.
Yeah, right.
They just kept going
down the line. Yeah,
going down in reverse order. That's all.
Now I want to go back to Sherwood Elementary because I have a question. Matt Wright and I were trying to figure this out.
Yeah.
In 5th grade, we had Mr. Hopkins, and then this other woman whose name I can't remember, who had very red lipstick.
Yes, very nice woman. They were all nice.
But they split the class.
That's right, Mrs. Banks.
Mrs. Banks. So they split the class into 3 sections. There was like the slow kids, the medium kids, and then the smart kids.
Which ones were we?
Well, from what I always have this story about, they put me in the slow kids, and I think it's because I was like a grade ahead. And so they put me with the slow kids. And then I found out what it was like to be defined as a slow kid.
Yeah.
Everything that I did took it the wrong way. Like I found this dowel on the playground. It was just a dowel. I was like, wow, this is neat. I put it in my desk, and they thought I was a bully.
Right. So doesn't that build sympathy? Whether it's issues of criminal justice, whether it's issues with people who feel disenfranchised in our country, and promise I won't get political or anything, but I think those experiences would you argue that you're the better for it, having experienced that, because now you have that sympathy response.
And luckily I had a mom who, when I came home, I came home with bad grades because everything I did. I wrote down, I always got good grades. And I wrote my name down the side of the page, and they thought I was being subversive in some way. One time we had to do an essay on a film we saw about bees, and they said, 1-page essay. So I wrote like a page and a half. And then at the end, there was still some space. So I wrote the end really big. And they thought I was just being a jerk and acting like I wrote a 2-page paper. And so they gave me a bad grade. And I came home with all these bad grades.
I did not know that.
My mom was so disappointed in me.
Yeah, I can see that.
That she,
I mean, knowing her,
she went right in there and she said, look, I understand you put my son in the slow class. I want you to put him in the smart class. And they put me in the smart class, and it completely changed. I mean, it was just, I was just back to, right on, Mom. But it also gave us that idea of like, what? So Matt Wright says, and I didn't think this was possible, but he said that you and he were put in the slow class at some point because you were talking too much.
Yes. So that part I can believe. So, we got in trouble constantly. And I remember seeing this in one of your other ones, I think with Jeff, where he very astutely pinpointed that actually sometimes friendship is a function of alphabet.
That's a very good point.
So for some reason, the way that the rows worked, that Sposato was, I sat next to or behind or in front of Matt, and we talked constantly. Yeah. And Matt was, as you can remember, it was an incredibly well-spoken, articulate, interesting, talented kid, even in 4th and 5th grade. And so there was just so much to talk to him about. We would draw stuff. I
remember, I have a vision, a picture in my head of you drawing a car. And you were behind me, and I think you were probably by Larry Metz and maybe Matt Wright, who knows? And you were drawing a car, and I looked back and I was like, oh no. Why can't I draw a car like that? I was just like, wait a minute. How can that guy, you were drawing a car. And for me, like I would draw cars and be like some wheels and like a box. But you had like this full on car, and it wasn't even like the side of the car. It was like kind of at an angle. So it had all these like sides to it and stuff.
Like a 3/4 view.
Yeah, I was like, I'm never gonna do
that. No, that's fun. It's fun that you remember all that stuff.
I was like, mental note, that kid's talented.
No, not and I put it to very good use these days.
Yes, you did. Didn't when you went to go work for Microsoft, wasn't that one of the things you did originally?
I see. Well,
didn't you draw characters or something, or what?
Kind of.
Jumping ahead, but I'm still interested.
No, not at all. You're actually conflating a couple of really interesting things. So when I, thanks to another mutual friend, which I will publicly acknowledge because I don't get a chance to do so often, Hayes Haugen was really kind of unwittingly or unknowingly a catalyst to starting my tech career in video games, right?
Really?
So he had a job. He was one of these genius teenage developers. So he had an Apple II. I think it was before I had a personal computer, but we would just go and be in his room up late when we were, I don't know, like 13 or 14 years old, just jamming on the Apple II and creating our own programs and games. Yeah. So he, a few years after that, got hired at a local game company, a game development company. And they were a bona fide famous company, Synergistic Software in Renton. They may still be around in some form. Anyway, to make a long story short, he then brought me on to do all the graphics for these games.
Really?
And I think a lot about, you're in the entertainment industry, Joel. I think a lot about whenever I see a movie or a documentary about the beginning of the movie industry, back in the teens or the 20s, and how they're just kind of making shit up. They're just trying to figure stuff out. How do we do a special effect? Do we do it, optically, or is it a practical thing that we shoot, or do we layer it, whatever it is. Yeah. It was like that with Hayes and I, and by extension, the entire games industry at that point in time. We were just making stuff up, and you could be a 15, 16-year-old kid and do this. So I was doing that for a job early on, but then when I was at Microsoft, I wasn't good enough to keep doing it. By that time, there were people who were like working at ILM, at Industrial Light and Magic, who had done Star Wars, and then they'd go work at Microsoft, doing game graphics. But I did work in a group that was all about exploring the use of or I was working with people that were doing this, that was about exploring characters and character development and applying that to software. And so that was really sort of intellectually interesting stuff to think about. And
did they make a game where there was a 7-Up dot that would bounce around or something like that?
It was called Spot, and that was pre-Microsoft. So that was very good. That was between Synergistic and for me before Microsoft, and that was both Hayes and I worked briefly. I don't know what, we were like a twosome for a while there. We were like a buddy show.
Like Jobs and
Jobs and Wozniak or something, or Gates and Allen or something. But that was for a company called Virgin Mastertronic, and it was a time when Richard Branson, whom I would meet years later, was a transition from records to other media. Yeah. And so computer games, video games was one of them. And so he had a company in Costa Mesa that was developing computer games. And there's a really talented guy whom I would have the opportunity to work with several times in my career, named Robert Stein, who went to, I think you have your MFA from Cal Arts. Yeah, Rob Stein's a Cal Arts guy.
Oh,
you know
really?
You know how good Cal Arts people are. Yeah. Right. And so he worked at Disney, and then he worked at Banana Republic, hand illustrating all of their really cool hand-drawn catalogs back in the day. And he and I and Hayes, we worked on Spot.
When we were kids, when we were in high school, all that stuff, you were always impeccably dressed.
Huh, I was?
Perfect. And you were never too fat, never too skinny, never too, just like a perfect person. Are you an android?
You're so nice.
Perhaps?
Yeah. Yes. No, you know what? It's interesting that you asked that. I thought a little bit about it recently as a result of one of the companies that I started called GeekWire. There was sort of a conversation with an employee there. But I do believe and I have nothing to complain about, by the way. I don't feel like that I have been grossly disadvantaged in any way growing up. I have nothing to complain about in life. So let that be the pretext here. But I do think that early on, if you are a person of color, growing up in a more in a white normative environment like North America, like the United States, I think that you do have to show up differently. And you hear this all the time from African American women, from Latina women, etc. That I better be somewhat impeccable. I better take off the table the things that are easy to take off the table. So there's that, and then I think in my case there's some additional insecurities that are superimposed on that too, that I myself superimpose on that.
Do you think you were afraid that they were going to send you back to Hong Kong, or do you think that anything like that?
No, it's more that I wouldn't be taken seriously, or sometimes it's you want to be seen, right? Yeah. And I do think, and this is stuff that whether it's my work with championing more women to be on boards or to be CEOs, or working with the homeless community here in Seattle. I think a lot of times it's important for us to raise visibility for people who have a hard time being visible. So.
Well, people also gave you a hard time, right? I mean, to be fair,
they did.
You were in elementary school. People gave you a hard time because
it was tough.
And also, people would ask you where you're from, and you would say you were Italian.
Yeah, it was easier. I'll address it backwards. It was easier to just say that.
Yeah.
Because to explain that I was half Chinese, half Korean, born in London, and adopted and legally adopted by an Italian American man. Right. Because the last name always threw people off, right? They would try to guess, like, Sposato, isn't that Italian?
Well, it sounded a little bit like it might be Japanese.
That's right.
You had Domo arigato, Mr. Roboto.
Yeah, that's right.
Which sometimes people said about you, Domo arigato, Mr.
Sposato. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So, I think it was difficult for you. And I think that there were definitely people that now have become much more enlightened that gave you a hard time.
Yeah.
Like Brian used to give you a hard time back in the day, but
that's right.
Apologized to you. I was there when he apologized when we were at a reunion or something because he felt so bad about it.
Yeah, and I really hope, as I said to you, I think that a few years ago, I hope that he did not harbor or carry with him a lot of that pain. Yeah. Because the reality is that here's the truth.
Yeah.
I think those experiences really galvanized me and helped me to become the kind of person that I am. And honestly, speaking very frankly, as a parent of a 10-year-old, I think to suffer and to understand, not that I suffered per se, it was just, I got teased for being Asian. There were mean kids in the neighborhood that tried to beat me up and did beat me up, but you learn, it kind of toughens you up. Mm-hmm. And I think it does galvanize you and catalyze in you a little bit more of a drive. And I think that I am the person that I am today because of those experiences. So number one, perhaps I'm the better for it. Number two, God, anybody that gave me a hard time when I was like in 4th grade or 5th grade, we were just all stupid kids. We were. Now, I mean, if you're still that guy now, then that's a problem.
That's a problem.
Then, but if you've become a
fireman,
or
like
captain,
a captain of the fire.
That's right. That's right.
Oh my God, that guy.
And here's the thing. And here's the thing, right? I think it's also important you're a very evolved and smart person, Joel.
I try.
But you've reached some point in your life where you realize that people who upset you or flip you the bird on the freeway or whatever, that you never know, it could be as trivial as that. You never know what's happening in their lives. You never know if that guy is going through a divorce, or the parents are going through a divorce, or someone's dying in their family. And these stressors, I think, kind of build up. And so I'm forgiving.
Okay. So do you remember Mrs. Nixon?
Yes, I do remember Mrs. Nixon, and I loved Mrs.
Math
Nixon.
Teacher. She was great, wasn't she?
I would just come out and say that Mrs. Nixon was one of my favorite teachers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so too.
Yeah.
You know what? She was hard on us though.
She was hard. She was tough. But
Tough.
we needed some of that. We needed our butts kicked.
We did need our butts kicked. One of the things that I liked was she said, read through the entire test before you take it, which is a great thing to do. Like, even to this day, like my wife and I are doing these recipes lately, and we never read through the whole recipe, and we always mess it up because we're like, oh, darn it.
That's my problem. That's my problem.
So she would do stuff
I try to
like
make
that.
stuff.
And like one time, I think at the end of a test, she had, if you haven't made a mark on this paper, you'll get an A. But it was at the end of the test.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And she did things like that. Or she was like, you got to have all these things in your peachy or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You got to have gummed reinforcements. You got to have this, and I'm going to check.
Yeah.
And it's going to cost the same as a test.
Right.
Whether you're prepared or not.
Yeah. No, I love that story. I love that story because I kind of forgot a lot. I mean, I was in multiple classes of hers, but years later, you'll enjoy this story. A very good friend of mine who's from LA, and he's from the entertainment industry. He's won Emmys and things like that. He was the executive vice president of Deke Entertainment.
Oh yeah.
So they've made movies and
DIC.
That's right, in Glendale, something like that. Anyway,
like that,
long story short, he retires and moves to Edmonds. He and I were friends going back, years. He becomes Gay Nixon's next door neighbor.
Really?
Yes. And then we would have these, and he would be like our conduit. He would be this like I would see Robbie for lunch and he'd be like, hey, you know what? Gay says hi. I'm like, and then so I would
connected to us, she would come to the dances and she was, was like the chaperone at the dances, but she'd be out there dancing away, and she even came to one of our reunions.
Yes. I seem to recall,
but she had a hard time because her husband was Richard Nixon's brother.
Right.
And he was apparently the brother. Yeah, which we doubted until somebody brought in that Life magazine.
She brought
her wedding. Oh, did she bring it in?
One time, and maybe she did she's done it every year or something.
He was in the back of the Life magazine, one more picture, and then there was a picture of her wedding. Yeah,
she just dropped it on my desk.
Really?
One morning, like we all were coming in, and she just, hey, Jonathan. And then I was like, what is, I'm like, why is,
really?
And
wow.
So,
I mean, well, so she had a little bit of an edge, and I always attributed it to that. I mean, her husband apparently looked like Richard Nixon, and sometimes they'd see people would yell at him in the airport and stuff like that. So,
wow. Yeah. Joe, if I may, I mean, do you ever miss Edmonds or Seattle at all? There's no right or wrong answer, obviously, but I wonder about you all the time.
Yeah.
It's
Kevin because I'm down here all the time. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah,
obviously I'm still very connected to Seattle. One of the things that in my older, I guess as I get older, I realized you can't take the Seattle out of the boy.
Yeah. That's right.
We're still very connected to Seattle, and it's still kind of what I've lived in LA as long as I lived in Edmonds, I guess.
Yeah.
And I still consider myself, from Seattle.
It's so cool to see what you and Kamala have done. And it just nothing pleases me more than to see people pave their own trail and to eke out a very creative, sort of, if I may say, somewhat unconventional, path. I think there's enough of that stuff, right? It's really great what you guys are doing.
Well, I mean, it's all Kamala. I'm just here to support, really. And also I think that there needs to be more men, more men in the feminist movement, because obviously,
Agreed.
How else are we going to get these things changed?
That's right. Yeah.
If half the population is not on board for this thing, and
that's right.
Ridiculous.
Yeah. Equal means equal.
Equal means equal. Don't forget it.
That's right.
Yeah. So I just want to find out more about after you graduated from high school, and you were working in the industry. You went and worked for Microsoft, right?
I had my own games company. So I started first.
Company?
Yeah.
You just started your own games company.
Yeah. This is when you were, blazing trails with the Steppenwolf theater and all that stuff. I started a company with 3 other business partners, and we very quickly grew to 41 employees. And the aforementioned Robert Stein, who worked on Spot, I hired him to work for us. And it was just a great team. We did games for the Sega Genesis, the Nintendo. There was like a NEC Turbo Graphics. I think they sold like 11 units, but we did games for that. We did games for the PC, for the Mac. It was a lot of fun. And quite frankly, I joke that was my MBA. That was sort of my crash course in learning how to run a business, how to manage employees, how to be an entrepreneur. And I probably made every mistake in the book. I probably screwed everything up. And to the point about screwing up fast and not being afraid to make mistakes, because you know you're going to make them. Just make the mistakes fast and move on.
I think that's the problem that most people don't get over. Is that they don't realize, oh, I'm going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
So a lot of times we like are perfectionists and we're like, oh, I've got to make sure I'm the best at this before I start doing it. And so a lot of us never get started.
Right. Yeah, you know? That's right. You got to just put one foot in front of the other. And especially if you can be lucky enough to work in a creative field where it's all kind of make believe anyway. You're making this stuff up. There's really no right or wrong. There's just different degrees of optimal. And then different that company was was that very Android-like?
No, I like it. Yeah, I'm going to use that for my stand-up.
Yeah, good. So that company was eventually sold to Electronic Arts, and then that was when I went to work at Microsoft because I actually, quite frankly, thought that I needed a real job. Up until that point, I thought that I didn't have a legitimate career or a real job, and I sort of wanted to learn what was, at that time Microsoft was like the hottest company on earth.
Oh my God.
Yeah. It was like
remember when you drive by there. I guess I would drive by there on the way to skiing, maybe. Something. I don't know. I always drove by Microsoft. Every time I drove by, there was a new building there. Then another building, and then another building, and another building. You're like, wait, and all of a sudden there's like a campus there.
Yeah.
And did you get in pretty early or what?
I got in 92, which is early enough, I guess. I mean, it felt very small, and it was wonderful. Truly, it was wonderful because it felt like a campus, like a college campus.
Yeah.
There were I want to say that there were fewer than, it was small enough still that you would know everyone.
Really?
And if you actually just kind of maybe only counted the people who did product development, who were creating stuff, it was a very small group, maybe 800 to 1,000 people.
Wow.
And Bill Gates was very involved. He would sometimes just ask you in email, hey, tell me about the project that you're working on. Or sometimes it'd be more formal, like every few months you would just go before him and show him the progress of what you were working on. And so that was also really, really great business experience for me, because I think I learned to shed that sometimes that if you just leaned in and didn't get scared, because he was the boss or anybody, if you just told the truth, if you did your homework, it's all going to be fine. So those are some early lessons that I always carry with me. So that was a wonderful time. I got to meet Steven Spielberg.
Did you really?
That time. Oh yeah. Yeah, it was cool.
Now were you somewhat of a spokesperson at a certain point where you went out front and you explained things, or you talked to the public, or?
I did.
Didn't you?
Yeah, it was an unofficial capacity. So I was still in the product groups, making stuff, but they sort of thought that I was a good complement to some of the other execs, demoing to the public or speaking to press. So there are a lot of really great memories of being on stage with Bill Gates, and he's not doing much of the talking. He's like, so Jonathan, what's that? And then I'll explain about the new kids 3D movie maker or whatever. Yeah. So that was also great learning, because you gain some confidence in terms of speaking in front of thousands of people or whatever. So
now
it was fun.
You were smart at this time, and you didn't go out and buy a bunch of Ferraris.
Still haven't bought one.
But you instead invested it into a company, right? Is that what you did? I mean, did
good question.
At the time, it was like people were just like, hey, I got $1 million or whatever. I'm going to go buy a bunch of stuff.
I am actually surprised that someone has not written a book about, there's kind of like a, what is it? The rabbit and a turtle thing there there was a whole generation or a whole group of people in the greater Seattle area who became, frankly, not very deservedly, myself included, pretty financially, did well financially through Microsoft stock options. Now, the sad reality was that stuff went underwater later.
I remember when I was, in Chicago or whatever, and everybody was just,
that's right.
There was a boom going on.
Yeah, exactly.
And all my friends were like, yeah, I'm totally set. I got all this, stock options. Everybody's going to be super wealthy. And I was like, oh man, I really missed the boat on that one.
Right. But it all,
billionaires.
but see, it was like a tale of two. Right. And it was a tale of two cities in a sense that you could kind of see what happens when a bunch of young people come into a couple of bucks, come into some money.
Yeah.
And there were people who made decisions, choices that were scary to me.
Yeah.
But I think that to them, it was just, it felt natural, and this is what you should do. And there's this aspect of, I think sometimes humans have a tendency to, it's like being a goldfish. You grow to the size of your bowl that your bowl will accommodate. And I think money has that effect on some people.
Why were you so smart with money? Like, where did you learn this? From your dad, from your mom, from anyone?
No, it's from struggling. It's from knowing what poor feels like. You know, when you're born to a single mom, I remember that apartment in Brooklyn. It was not great. Yeah. I remember how hard, I just have some visceral early memories of how hard my mom struggled.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, even when she married Don Sposato, great guy, I always felt that pressure, and I'm acutely aware of sometimes geography, the family that you're born into sometimes I was always really, quite frankly, envious of some of my other friends, you know, you and Matt Wright and some of the others where, number one, your parents stayed together. There was no fracturedness in your childhood. There's no getting divorced or things like that. But also that your parents were just really amazing people who provided a very stable home. And you guys I looked up to you guys, or, you know, you had memberships at tennis clubs and, you know, Klahaya. And, you know,
Did you want to be a member of Klahaya?
Oh, absolutely.
Really?
Man,
was that like the thing?
It would up my tennis game. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's where we really bonded too, was tennis.
Yes, that's right.
You still play
you were
tennis?
A good player. Well, what I do on a tennis court these days really shouldn't be called tennis. So I want to say that I hit a little bit here and there. So
really?
Yeah. How about you?
I gave up completely because I finally realized I love tennis.
Yeah.
But tennis just does not love me.
No,
Every time I get out there,
it absolutely loved you at some point.
You know when I really realized it was a friend of mine who lives in the Pacific Palisades. He's like, I got a house with a tennis court. You want to come over and play? Yeah. And I was like, yeah. Well, he goes, I know you play tennis. And I was like, yeah, sure. I'll come over there. And he's like, maybe you can give me some pointers or whatever.
Yeah.
And I go over there and I must have hit 5 balls over the fence. And it wasn't, you know, the Pacific Palisades, it just went flying out.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. You're not going to get it back. Yeah.
And the guy was better than I was. And I was just like, you know, I was so beating myself up about it. And I finally was like, why are you doing this, Joel?
Yeah.
Either spend some time playing tennis and really get the fundamentals down, or just let it go. Sometimes you don't have to do everything.
Yeah, you don't have to do everything. But having said that, Joel, we're at the same place right here on tennis. So why don't, you know, if you ever want to,
Okay. My dad, who I taught to play tennis, you know, way back in Klahaya days, still plays to this day. He has half a foot. He had a heart attack on the tennis court at one point, a long time ago.
No.
Oh, but he's still playing. Playing. He's, you know, 80.
Amazing. No, your dad was a great guy. I mean, your mom was a great person too. I remember that she was very sweet and kind. But your dad, I always admired because every time I would come over to your house, there'd be some amazing, very structurally amazing looking sculpture.
Yeah.
And then one of these, I don't know, you know, when you're a kid, you don't think to ask. But finally, I think by the time in high school, I go, Joel, what does your dad do for a living?
I know. I wouldn't even tell people. I used to say
he was an art professor.
I used to say my dad was an accountant. I couldn't explain it to people because I'd say my dad is a metalsmith, and they'd be like, "Oh, what do you mean? He like makes barbecues or something?" And no. And they're like, "Do you shoe horses?" And I'm like, "No, I think that's a blacksmith."
Right.
Sculptures, and they'd be like, "What do you mean sculptures?"
Yeah, that's right.
Unemployed.
Right.
Luckily, he was a professor at the UW, so I could say that.
Yeah, a very accomplished one too.
Yeah, he's always been my, you know, real role model though, because
that's great.
You know, of anybody who is so prolific in their art. And
that's right.
Fan. He has such an ability to focus.
Commit.
Yeah, and he loves it. He's still doing it to this day. He's doing paintings and putting metal in the paintings and things. So,
wow,
you know, it's cool to see that kind of passion and to see that kind of discipline. I guess the word is discipline.
Yeah. Right.
And I've always kind of, aspired to that.
Yeah, yeah. But I understand that your difficulty explaining what your dad did.
One time Jeff Lohman came over. My dad was out in the front yard and he had all these rocks all laid out, and he had this sprinkler in the middle of it.
That sounds like
he was just looking at it.
Uh-huh.
And Jeff turns to him and goes, "I don't think they're ever going to grow."
And I have to say, Jeff, I underappreciated how hilarious. I think my own sense of humor was very underdeveloped, and that's why I didn't appreciate. Yeah. But he is so funny.
So deadpan.
Yes.
And he doesn't even know it. I mean, he wouldn't even know the term deadpan. It's just, that's just the way he is.
Yeah. Right.
So you don't even know he's being funny until all of a sudden you're laughing and you're like, well, it's great.
Well, please give my warm regards to both your parents and
absolutely. How about your parents? How are your parents doing?
They're all right. My mom is the same. She's almost, it's almost freakishly weird how young she looks, how sort of active she is. But at the same time, frankly, the memory is going.
Yeah.
So we're starting to get so she's physically healthy, but we're starting to get that thing where she tells the same story a few times in one conversation. My dad is, so they've since divorced, and my dad's doing all right. I mean, he's hanging in there. He got married again, and he has another daughter, named Angela, and they're doing great. So, thank you for asking.
Jeff and I were talking about your animals, and he said you had a dog, and I said you had a white cat with big fangs.
Both were true.
It's both true. Okay, good.
Both were true. Yes, to this day, I will have nightmares
it would come up
about that cat.
I remember sitting there, and all of a sudden, I felt this kind of presence.
Yeah,
and then I see that cat just starting to dig right into my arm with the big fangs.
Yeah, yeah.
It was like a vampire cat.
Yeah, I know something was wrong about this cat.
There's wrong with that cat.
You're just trying to pet the damn thing, and all of a sudden it's doing that thing where it's scratching you. You're going to do that with their hind legs?
Yeah.
I hate that. Down. Yeah. But the dog was very friendly. The dog stayed with me till I was in my 20s, and I had a cool little convertible sports car when I was like 23, 24, and it would ride with me, it would ride shotgun, and it was great. I'd drive down like in Broadway or something, and people would wave at us, and the dog was like the coolest, funnest way to meet people.
I think I'm going to close by just saying that I found this hilarious picture of the Honor Society in our yearbook.
Oh, awesome!
And I'm going to post it here.
Was I in that?
You were in it, and it's
what was the cutoff for the Honor Society?
I don't know. Like half the school. I realize a lot of people in this picture. But it's a great picture because everybody's in it. Jeff Lohman is not in it for some reason. He's the one who sent me the picture.
Yeah, he should be in it. Yeah,
he should, but he was not in it. But like Lori Moan and Matt Wright, and we're spelling out
a lot of smarties.
We're spelling out myth in our bodies.
Yeah.
Andy James is like the exclamation point.
Andy, yeah.
And then you're there. But you look like you're in a different picture.
Oh yes, I noticed. No,
you know the picture?
I do.
You have this look on your face. And I don't, I'm just interested in what's going on in your head, because I asked Matt Wright, because he also looks like he's in a different picture. And
there was a lot going on in our lives then, to our earlier point.
Yeah, I wonder,
so Matt, to his credit, I remember that it was a transformative time for him.
Yeah.
I remember that this was when he was discovering his music. I think there was a newfound independence for him, and he sort of, it was a really cool thing to see. And because I went to college with Matt, he sort of continued on that very cool journey. In my case, frankly, I remember similar things as that photo. And
do you think you were like separating out in some way, or do you think you were thinking a lot? Or?
Yeah, it's the latter. It's not that I was trying to separate from you guys, not by any means. I think that in looking back, I have nothing but fond memories and how enriched I was by your friendships, friendships with all of you. I think it was that there was stuff going on with my parents that precipitated their divorce. I think that there was a lot of just being in my own head, and frankly taking myself too seriously. I remember being the student body president, and there was an assembly, maybe it was like the Chicken Olympics or one of those,
Chicken
cool
Olympics. Forgot
and
about
there was a special, all I remember, and maybe I'm conflating a bunch of stuff, but I remember there was an assembly, and I think all I had to do was just kind of like get people riled up or something. And there was a band that we had hired to kick off with some music.
Yeah.
And I remember one of the band members, and they were so good. I can't remember, but like the whole school was clapping, right? They were just clapping to the music. And I remember one of the band members was, kind of running through the audience, and he stops right in front of me, and he kind of kicks me in the foot gently. He goes, "Come on, man, lighten up." And then he runs off, and then that was my signal that, wait a second, I need to sort of.
I think I did that too for a while. For a long while, took myself too seriously. I know that was like my MO, was not taking myself seriously. But I think after I went to college, I got really serious about theater, and I was going to be a theater actor. And I was really serious about the theater. And then I moved to Chicago, and I was saying that to Kevin, that when I was there, I mean, there was all this improv going on, Second City and all this stuff. And I didn't engage in it at all because I was taking myself too seriously.
I see. Interesting. I've learned a lot more about you, Joel, since this series.
Really?
Well, you still remain one of the most kind-hearted, talented, polymath kind of guys, and,
that's nice of you
just keep on keeping on. And
you too, Jonathan. I hope that we can communicate more. I know that through doing this, I really reconnected with Matt Wright.
Yeah, that's right.
I was talking all the time.
Right.
And,
that's cool.
And he, and also Jeff Lohman and I have been talking since, I guess, the late 90s. Well, we've kept in communication.
Yeah, you guys kept in
touch somehow. We were even on like the IRQ back in the the 90s or whatever.
Yeah,
we were like chatting or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's just good to be in communication.
And let me know what is your sort of because I know that you asked others of this, so I'll flip it on back to So, but what are you excited about right now? What are what projects, and whether it's you or you and Kamala? Yeah.
Well, what I've been doing is I've been doing stand-up, doing a lot of stand-up, and that has really been a place for me to kind of refined myself, I guess. But just to get honest and serious, I mean, I'm honest most of the time. I always hate that when people say, to tell you the truth.
I've been
lying the whole time. No, a few years ago, I was kind of lost. I didn't feel like I was presenting myself. I didn't feel like people were knew who I was. I just kind of disappeared. And I think it's because I was working for law firms, and I was acting, and I was doing comedy. And I set out on my own to do my own business, because I thought if I had my own business fixing people's computers and stuff, I would be able to do my acting career. And I would have, all the time that I needed to do that. But it turned out what I did is I labeled myself computer guy. And so everybody in the entertainment industry, everybody that I knew, all my friends thought I was a computer guy. And I totally did not express to them that I was an actor and a comedian and all these things.
No, I get it.
I had a kind of a moment where I was just like, what am I doing? Oh, and then I worked with Kamala on Equal Means Equal and produced that film and everything. But that was, again, sort of a behind the scenes kind of thing.
Yeah.
So a few years back, I had to go, wait a minute, let's regroup a little bit.
Yeah.
And I had to kind of define myself again. And I had to do the thing that you're talking about, put one foot in front of the other.
Yeah.
And just say, okay, let's just start moving down this path. So that's what I've been doing. So what I'm looking to do in the next, in the coming years is more stand-up comedy. I'm really enjoying that. And then I'm out there auditioning for things and acting.
That's great.
And so
I'm
the most happy when that happens. I found out, oh, this is what makes me happy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And at this point, this is kind of what you do. It's like, what makes me happy? How can I, and my goal is to do my passions to inspire other people to do theirs. That's basically my
That's cool. That's a cool mission statement. Like a personal mission statement. And for what it's worth, Joel, number one, I really appreciate your candor there, but also for what it's worth, I go through those same machinations every few years, sort of about every 5 to 7 years. There's maybe some transition. Maybe you've put to bed one company and you're thinking about what you're doing next.
Yeah.
And there are, it's non-trivial, these issues of where if you have a career that's sort of non-conventional, issues of identity. What am I about? How do I occur optically to this group of peers versus another group of peers? Well, they think I'm this way, but that's not how I want to. That's not really who I am, or not the total me.
I must not be informing them of who I am.
Yeah. So for what it's worth, I can very much understand that, and it's actually kind of a natural thing. And I think that as you've gotten, you become better at those kinds of transitions, I guess. Yeah. Right.
And I also think that there's a certain point where you go, I don't have to be perfect at everything.
That's right. You give yourself permission to be imperfect. Yeah, that's right.
Because we're only here for a little while.
That's right. That's right, brother.
For a while, man.
Yeah, right. That's right.
So let's wrap it up. It's so great seeing you. I appreciate you taking this time, and carry on. Carry on, brother.
May the force be with you.
May the force be with you. Also with you.
Yeah.
Little religious.
That's great. Yeah, that's awesome. Okay. Bye-bye, Joel.
All right. That's it. That's the interview with Jonathan Sposato. That was super fun. And a lot of people in the chat room. Really good time. Thanks for all being there. Join me next week. I'm going to tell the story that Bob Royce brought up about the time we got in a fight on the internet in the 80s. And also we're going to do some prancer-cise, because that's been requested. If you don't know what prancer-cise is, you will. And we're going to continue the Alaska stories next week. And I'm going to end the week with something that I have already shown, but I talked through the whole thing. So it's the little video that I made of the guy with the hoop and the Indian chanting over it. And also, I invite you this time to take a look at the people behind the guy, too, because that's very interesting. And yes, there was internet in the 80s. Thank you very much. Only for a select few. Only for a select few.